Welcome to the VIFF Podcast, recorded on the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh Nations. This podcast is a chance to hear more from the filmmakers presenting work at the annual Vancouver International Film Festival, as well as year-round at the VIFF Centre. We hope you enjoy the show. Welcome to the VIFF Podcast. My name is Curtis Walshuk. I'm the Director of Programming at VIFF, and I'm joined by Ryan Sidhoo, Director of the Track. Welcome to the podcast, Ryan.
Thank you for having me, Curtis.
So we always like to ask our guests to walk us through your film in your own words.
Yeah, The Track is a coming-of-age story of three friends growing up in post-war Bosnia, and they have Olympic aspirations, and they train on their abandoned luge track, which was left over from the 1984 Olympics, and they're using that to get to the next Olympics. But really, at its core, it's a film about just, three friends navigating the struggles of a post-conflict society, and I think that's the heart and soul of the project.
Beautifully said. I'm really curious because it feels like a documentary oftentimes are almost this act of faith. You begin on these trajectories of stories and perhaps don't know exactly where they're going to take you. And wondering what brought you into kind of the orbit of these three boys, how you became aware of them, of their aspirations, and maybe just some early conversations that allowed you to be the person to tell their story as well.
Yeah. Well, I think for people who know me, it's like, well, of course, Ryan made this project. I think I get a lot of questions of how did you discover the story? And for me, I think in my early 20s, people are like searching for themselves. They're searching for different things. And for whatever reason, I really connected with former Yugoslavia. So I was always in the region, traveling there, fell in love with the history. So I was just there a lot. And of course, I was in Sarajevo, and I was just walking on the luge track, because the luge track, you have to remember, it's like, I guess maybe for sports lovers or just tourists in general, it's almost like going to see the Berlin Wall. It's like this massive concrete structure in the middle of a forest that, was part of the Olympics, 1984, and then obviously, with the unfortunate history with the war there. So I was just walking on the track, and at the time, it wasn't even the boys in the movie. It was the Slovakian luge team were one of the first teams to see the value in the track and use it for summer training on these little rollerblade wheels. So I was there. They told me to get off the track, and I was like, this is incredible. This is amazing. I have to tell this story. And really from there, I just nurtured the relationship with the coach, Sened, who people meet in the film. And then I said, like, who do you have kind of coming up? And, I met the three boys, and I was like, I'm just going to go out there and film a little bit. And before we started filming, I was just talking with them, talking with their families. Like at the time, they were 16 years old, quite mature. But just speaking with them and speaking with their family, like I like to say, we co-authored the film. It's like, what do you want to show? How do you want to show it? And then, it's kind of up to me as a director-producer to bring that to life and keep the integrity.
Well, that feels like that important division between subjects of a film and participants in a film. And It seems like that's something you value yourself as a filmmaker.
I don't like the word subject. Like, we're all just making a film together. Yeah, they're participants, they're on screen, but it's important to include them and be transparent and show them cuts and really give them a voice. Like, it's their story, and I'm just kind of, artistically guiding it in a sense, but I'm just, trying to, take the information or what's going on in their lives and portray it on camera that's true to them, and also for an audience entertaining, so people are actually like invested in what they're about or what their message is or what their ambitions are. So that's like the tricky part.
Your previous projects included True North basketball in Toronto, and then producing The Nautic, which played at VIFF, Handled with Care, a couple years ago. And both those projects kind of deal with like this intersection of sports and space to some degree. And I'm curious whether you see The Track as like an extension of those projects and some of those things that intrigue you, or would it really feel like a departure? And I guess recognizing the timeline also means that there was some overlap between these projects as well.
Yeah, I think I actually, I finished True North. Like, The Track has been going on for quite a while. I think almost like 8 or 9 years, but from development to now, like maybe it's been close to 10 years. But I think I finished True North, flew to Bosnia for the first time to film with the boys, and then I flew to Montreal to do post-finishing on True North. And then obviously did Handle with Care, the Nautic project in between all of this. But in terms of, it being an extension. I mean, of course, I love sports, but I think this is kind of like, I wouldn't really consider it a sports story. Like, I think at the core of True North, it was basketball. At the core, Handle with Care is like a little less. If True North was kind of more basketball sport focused, I think Handle with Care was a little less. And I think the track, if it's defined as a sports film, I think I've failed.
That's
It's a
fair.
good hook. It's a good hook for marketing. It makes a trailer kind of fun, and there's elements of it, but it's really like a coming of age story of three friends.
And yeah, and it feels like it's a charting the country's recovery as well, or continued recovery, and kind of that intergenerational um, division as well of people coming of age in this space. And curious for yourself, like maybe when shooting, there's a Canadian filmmaker. Any experiences you had with be it bureaucratic wrangles in that space, and then maybe even like interactions with the Bosnian film community as well.
Um, I mean, I think documentary is pretty lean, like, at least for myself and my approach, it's very lean. So, I wouldn't say there was any like red tape or flags. Obviously I had a really good fixer there, Yasmina Jacoli, who's a co-EP on the film. So like we had, a lot of different people worked on the project at different times, but having a really heavy Bosnian crew helped, just making sure everything was smooth and no problems. So I think that is maybe why there wasn't any issues just dropping a whole bunch of Canadians in there. But, I've also been in the region so long and kind of understand how it works. Um, and then, oh, sorry, what was the second part of the question?
Oh, second was about any engagement you had with the Bosnian film community.
Well, right, just like the local crew, right?
Yeah.
And I think, having cinematographers or sound recordists, or having Yasmina there who also works as a journalist, like I just think that made the participants more relaxed, and also just allowed me to. It's just more efficient. You're just like, oh well, where could we get a shot of this? Oh, I know a great lookout will be there in 5 minutes, as opposed to me looking on Google Maps and trying to figure it out. So, that was one of the best experiences. And at the end of the film, this really young, talented filmmaker and cinematographer came on, Irving Golubovich, who's one of the key cinematographers on the film, and getting to know him and kind of mentoring him, and we've like really bonded and kind of become a little filmmaking duo together. So like just the relationships with the crew, especially the local crew, has been one of the highlights of the entire process for me.
You mentioned perhaps an analog to the track, it being the track itself, being like the Berlin Wall, and it's like this document through graffiti and other pieces. It's incredibly cinematic in its own right, and um, wondering as an extent, if that was like your first encounter point with these youths, this narrative, how you maybe just developed like the visual language for the film and thought about it, in cinematic terms, in addition to honoring these boys' story.
Well, I think the funny thing is that I came off of True North, which was like really fast paced basketball. It was a little more run and gun. So when I first started filming, I wasn't necessarily as patient as I wanted to be. And also, you're shooting because you're gonna go. I'm gonna shoot like a sizzle, and then I'm gonna shop it, and I'm gonna get money and all that kind of stuff. Whereas it was all done through grants. So I think the visual language over time, like it emerged, and I was actually able to mature as a filmmaker throughout the whole process. So I look at some of the early stuff, I'm like, ugh, right? It's a little bit tough to watch because my headspace wasn't there. Or I didn't really have the visual language established, but I have to use some of that early stuff, which was really more development shot for a trailer. So it was just really reviewing the footage, and then seeing, sitting with Graham Withers, the editor, and going, okay, what's working, what's not working. Looking at films that we really like Honeyland or Fire at Sea. And I'm not saying this film is shot like that, but could we work a little bit of like a beautiful static in, or what would this shot look like if it was positioned this way with working with Jesse, the other cinematographer. So I just think over time the visual language came out. And I think maybe the one regret I do have on the project is that I should have been a little more patient in the beginning when I was first shooting to really hone in on how I wanted it to look rather than just shooting for development.
It's really intriguing to think about, like you said, 8 or 9 years of those first shots being captured, and like just how different a person you are, or different a filmmaker you are at that stage as well, and maybe curious about the editing process for yourself, like how much were you honoring their story, and then also trying to maybe be indicative of the filmmaker you are now that you weren't when you first captured those first shots.
Well, the
Was that a balance to achieve?
well the like looking back, the way that how we shot and then went into the edit, I would do on every other film, but it was just the nature. Like on this project, okay, we're in Canada, so I'd go get a little bit of funding. We'd go to Bosnia, we'd film, and then I was like, jonesing to work on the project. So, but I only have this amount of footage. So I really got, so we'd edit scenes and really review them and going, is this true? Is this entertaining? Are we progressing the story? And we'd really just think about story. But I have so much time because I just didn't have the luxury to go shoot the next day with them. So then, Graham and I just spent so much time obsessing about story, trying scenes different ways. How does this feel? Then we would go with all that information and knowledge. I'd have like a pretty good roadmap of like how to fill in the blanks of the story. Then we'd go back and shoot, and we just kind of like rinse and repeat that cycle. And for me, that was far more productive, and I think far better for the project, the narrative, the flow, rather than some of the other projects I've worked on where shoot, 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 edit, 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 a little room for pickups, and then you're done. So this kind of back and forth, I would apply even to a film I shot in Vancouver.
You're in the couple years or the few years that we've known each other, you're someone who's always like been very comfortable like reaching out like with questions and like seeking advice, even like about European festivals that might be a good fit for the film, or I think maybe when you're shooting some of the final footage for the film, like even thinking about some opportunities for markets and sales and things like this. And there are other filmmakers who are very kind of like guarded about the project and like not wanting to let too much out until it's done. But do you think this is that an active part of your process to kind of just be a bit more of a, not an open book, but being open to uh, kind of suggestion, open to
Well,
conversation around, how you should approach different
I think
elements of
with
it?
like you, I trust you,
Okay.
right? And I trust you. I appreciate your taste. There's a rapport. You've programmed one of my films before, so there's select people who I'll go to, and I'm comfortable enough to, take the feedback, take any criticism, room for improvement. Other people would say, oh, like you don't even tell me what's going on. So I think it's selective. You're in the inner circle, Curtis. So.
A hallowed place to be.
I don't know. I don't know, but I'll take the compliment. But yeah, I think it's just identifying people that you respect and respect their taste. And I think the film is better because of that process and not getting too sentimental about it. Like I'm gonna make it how I want to make it anyway. But if I get some good food for thought, or it makes it just 1% better, or okay, that scene could be shorter, or this is redundant, like all of that, you just lose sight. Like you work on it for so long and you're just like, is this good? There's so many times where it's like that thing you see online where you start a project and you think it's going to be good, and then you go to a place where you're like, this is the worst thing ever, and then you kind of come out of there. So it's so hard after a while to just objectively look at something. So I know that, and it's nice, and it's nice to get the feedback, and if people want to give it and take the time of day to do that, that's I'm all for that.
Well, you mentioned a few different like granting cycles to continue to be able to make the film, and I know it also went through a couple of like documentary labs, I think in San Francisco and elsewhere, and wondering maybe how valuable those different checkpoints were to kind of like reassess your own take on what this film was, like when you need to write about it actively, of like, this is what this film is now at this stage, and my conception of it is this, like almost to interrogate maybe some of those assumptions you had 2 years before that, and be like,
Yeah.
is that still what this film is, or is it now this instead?
Well, I mean, for me, like people are like, "Oh, like why did you want to make?" I'm just like, I wanted just to watch this movie. I'm like, "Oh, it doesn't exist, so I have to make it." And I'm like, it's just fascinating. But then when you are forced, whether it's writing a grant, it forces you to like peel back the layers and go, "Okay, well, you know, for me, I'm just find it interesting." Now, okay, well, why is it interesting? Why do tourists go look at the track? So it forces you to think about why would be interesting for audiences, or dig deep in yourself and go, okay, what is it actually about the track and the story in Bosnia that really inspires me? And I think from there, then you kind of find the universal language in messaging. And then it was really interesting we did a lot of markets. Um, and they're interesting because it's a little like you have to pitch the film. I don't love sales pitches and doing that. I just hope that people would see it and kind of would speak to them, and then we could have a genuine dialogue about it. But it is interesting getting the feedback or hearing what people are looking for. There's some feedback I did get. They said, "Oh, um, is this going to be a sports film, and is it going to have certain camera angles?" And I was like, no, like I don't like people could go watch Drive to Survive on Netflix for that. But then I thought about it, and there are some really great GoPro shots in the film that did make it better. At the time, I didn't really like hearing that feedback, but I was able to marinate on it, and try it out. And I think the film is better for that. And that was me listening to the market. That was someone who was saying, "Oh, how could I market this film?" Right? And I think in a trailer or a clip, seeing the boys go down the track with the GoPro is it's gripping, it's grabbing, it's provocative, and all that. So as much as I don't love going to those markets, there is valuable lessons to be learned, and also just to learn that the market is very tough, and it's a strange time for documentary right now.
Yeah, you found yourself in a huff and be like, if you want Joseph Kaczynski's The Track, then go talk to him about it, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah, all adrenaline junkie all the time.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's you you mentioned that it's a tough time for documentary, um, but it's a film that's played a good number of festivals to date, and um, there are some elements of the film, we won't go too much into it, where you're at the very least watching these young men like chase a fairy tale,
Mhm.
which is very compelling. I think for an audience on a purely visceral level. But have you noticed that the film does it resonate with audiences differently in various spaces, or kind of within the context of maybe a documentary festival versus a mixed fiction documentary festival, or have you found different reads in the audience and what this film is to them?
Well, there's certain parts in the film that, like, there's one part in the film that that everyone cheers, like in the audience, that like consistently people have clapped and cheered, and that's been really nice. And that, as a filmmaker, or for the participants, like that's just very heartwarming to see that touch people in a way where they're cheering and making noise and clapping, and that's like the coolest. That's like, I haven't worked on a lot of films where there's like an eruption of applause during the film. Sometimes you get some laughs, but that's really special. And I would say, with the festivals I've attended, regionally, like obviously we showed at the Sarajevo Film Festival, and there's certain things that the locals will obviously connect with there that's going to be different than showing at True False. So, and also the Bosnian diaspora comes out to the film. So it's like in each audience, there's Bosnians, there's, if we're showing in Canada, there's Canadians. So like, the conversations you have after, and it's really interesting. Of course, there's the things that land universally, but then there's also the things that land for people in, unique ways. Like Canadians are like, "Oh, well, they talk about Olympic funding a lot. Oh, like, how's their funding? How are they doing? Obviously in the Balkan region, they might talk about other topics about, just the bureaucracy or youth unemployment or, just how inspiring these three young men are. So it's been interesting region by region to see the reaction. Like, obviously, we went to Kosovo and we got a lot of press there, and a lot of the press was about, you know, youth in a post-war time, like the generation after war, because obviously they have, a very similar history there with conflict. So region by region, you get a little bit of a different reception, more so than I would say, showing in San Francisco that has fiction and doc, or VIFF that has fiction and doc. It's yeah. So those have been the reactions based on region.
I'm curious about the Sarajevo screening and perhaps
Yeah.
pressure you felt going in. Did that feel like the true kind of acid test for yourself? Of
Well, we had the world premiere at True False. And I was incredibly nervous because we were opening. We got the True Life Fund, which was amazing, and that's just very quickly a fund where they raise money for the participants of the film. So people wanted to, and Mirza was there too. So, there's like 1,300 people in this audience. I've shown it to maybe a dozen people. So I was pretty nervous just to show the film, and is it going to land? Are people going to laugh at the parts, cheer at the parts? Technically, is the DCP okay? Are the subtitles okay? Like all those, like that was just terrifying. But in Sarajevo was obviously nerve wracking. Like I thought just I've done a good job making a very honest story and keeping it true, and again co-authoring it with Mirza and Hamza Zlatan and Senad, and having the local crew and all of that. But of course, you're showing it to the people there, and Mirza says, "Oh, like audiences here are very judgmental." Uh, so yeah, of course you're a little bit on edge, but we ended up winning the audience award, which I think was the just like I words for that made me feel just that like filled my heart, to get the audience award there, and every show was sold out, and just seeing the boys and the coach get their flowers,
yeah,
like especially the coach. Senad is incredibly underappreciated. He sacrificed so much, basically carrying an Olympic program on his back, going to the track to fix it himself, and just for people to be in tears coming up to him, or just really like feel that, it was incredible. I was just, I don't think many people really cared to talk to me, and I was totally fine with that because I could just sit back, and that was like the best movie for me, rather than the movie itself. Was sitting back in Sarajevo. It was just so surreal with 1,000 people there, and they're just, you know, mobbing the boys, and Senad, and again, them getting their flowers was like, all time filmmaking moment for me.
Senad has that line, obviously, to paraphrase, like who decides what matters, and it must have been a moment of vindication for himself, for someone who's faced so many hurdles in his career, and as you said, kind of just on force of belief alone, needing to carry that program.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You just hope it sustains, right? You hope the film, the film has been great. We got that fund. We raised a significant amount of money for them, and that's gonna make a difference in their lives. But of course, we would all want to see the track be rebuilt, or even just for summer runs for training on wheels. So, hopefully the film and that buzz in Sarajevo helps them, and helps the program.
You mentioned the film having its world premiere at True False, which means that of the kind of Vancouver filmmakers, if you will, who are at the festival this year, yours has been on the circuit for the longest, and much like the maybe 8 years to make the film. I'm just curious, like, if your relationship with it now that it's been out in the world over the course of 6 months, has your own perception of the film changed from what you took to True False, only 12 people having seen it, and now that it's been, shared with thousands of people around the world?
I just think this whole moment that the film's had has been, it's just been quite magical. It's been amazing, and I know how hard it is to make a film, and I know that I get denied by film festivals all the time, and even with this film, right? And so just to get into festivals is a miracle. But the reception it's had and the run that it's had, I'm just like, this is so unique. This is so special. So I'm just so happy that the film has had a life. People have been able to, experience it in a theater. It's meant to be. It is a fun movie that should be seen in a theater rather than a cell phone, and also just the opportunity the festivals have also created for the boys. Like again, going back to that fun, but Mirza's really leaned into the opportunity. He's come to so many festivals. He's got to see the world. Ervin, the young cinematographer, he's come to a couple festivals. Graham, the editor, came to Sarajevo, got to meet everybody. So, like, all of that has been, it's not lost on me how special this has been. Like, if nothing else happens with the movie, this festival run, raising the money for the boys, getting the audience award, like I'm very content. Just because I know how hard it is. It's not easy, and it's not, just to get out of the mindset of, oh, well, like, what else? What's next? Like, could we do something more? Like, of course, all of those things, and then hopefully, this is available on a bigger platform and people can watch it. But it's also just like, I don't know, maybe it's just getting a little bit older. I'm like, this doesn't happen often. I'm not sure I'll ever be able to top this film and all the special things that have happened.
Just curious, like, and also this opportunity to reflect back upon your relationship with the boys and having not only on film seen them grow up, but be present there with them on many occasions as well.
Yeah, like they're truly like brothers, like little brothers, which I never had a younger brother. I was the younger brother. So it's been really interesting meeting them at 15 and 16, and now they're in their early 20s. So just seeing them mature. I mean, the audience sees them mature on camera, but just to see it in real time, and just the difference in conversation that we have,
Yep.
right? You're talking to a 16-year-old, and I'm just trying my best, especially when I first met them. Like Hamza, for example, is a tough audience. You'll meet Hamza in the film if you come watch the movie. But I'm just trying my best to, like, hopefully this guy doesn't think I'm like too lame or too much of a square. Like, okay, what could we talk about? Basketball, we talk about music, like something that we could find common ground. But now that they're adults with responsibilities, it's been like a total trip to talk. Just talk about life with them, or certain things that I'm going through in my life, they also now might be going through in their lives. So that's been pretty incredible and strange and fun, and even just like going to a bar with them now, it's like, what the heck, like Miss Mears is at the bar. Like, it was so funny at the in Sarajevo, at the film festival. Like, there was this whole red carpet thing, and there was a bar, but the bartender wasn't there. So Mirza and Zlatan like hopped over the bar, and they were serving drinks for everybody. And they were wearing, like, they looked really sharp, but they were wearing black. So people thought they were like kind of like waiters, and they were like serving drinks, taking shots. And it was just like, what is going on here? You feel like a little bit responsible for them, but they were generally well behaved.
Well, maybe moving into a question that maybe takes you back to when you were 15, 16, maybe even earlier. I always like to ask each of our guests, maybe a formative in cinema experience for yourself when you look back at younger days that really kind of indelibly sticks with you.
Yeah. Well, I knew you were going to ask this question, so I thought about it a little bit. And this might not directly be answering the question, but I think I could just look at my life through the lens of going to the cinema, right? Like, I have memories of going to, Capital Six with my mom, or going to a matinee with my mom. And then you get a little bit older, and then you're going to the movies with your friends, and you're seeing different kinds of films. Then, I remember, like, for example, the first time I went to a cinema in a foreign country, like, that was a big deal for me. I think I went to go see Batman in Serbia. Um, and then now my films are showing at theaters, and I just think it's kind of cool to look at, the process of going to the the cinema is like chapters in my life.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense or connects. And of course, there's like different movies along the way that stick out. I remember seeing Training Day at Oak Ridge. And like after, I was in like the 8th or 9th grade. This is like the coolest movie ever. And, Yeah, my mom took us to see the Titanic, and she really liked that. And so yeah, I don't know. It's my whole life could be just chapters at the cinema.
Good Oak Ridge Cinemas shout out.
Yeah, oh yeah, it was a
Yeah,
good.
they can build like what 800 stories to the new one, but it's not going to have that grody little cinema in the
That
basement.
was great. It had three. I think there's three theaters, 1, 2, and 3, and you go down the escalator. And I mean, Capitol 6 also. Like I've seen so many movies there. It was just the best. And then Granville across the street wasn't as nice, wasn't as a classy establishment as Famous Players Capitol 6. But
Lasted a bit longer though.
yes,
Yeah,
yes, it
stood the
did.
test of time that
Yes,
much longer.
yeah.
And then, yeah, curious for yourself, like your kind of path to filmmaking. Um, was it a natural progression? Was there like a sharp turn at some point? And I'm curious about maybe any like valuable mentors along the way for yourself as well.
Yeah, I think it was I as a student I went to the Sundance Film Festival because I was like really into the academic uh, film criticism. I thought I was going to go do like a PhD and write about movies, and then I went to Sundance and I saw normal people making films. Like, I think getting that exposure, because you think about films, you think about the studio system, or you think about these big budget films, but you go to Sundance, I think I was at the world premiere of Restrepo, which was quite a powerful film. And then just seeing the filmmakers there, or just seeing other small documentaries. And it was like tangible. You could go up and talk to the filmmaker. They weren't a celebrity. It was just people who made it. I think that kind of flipped a switch. And I was like, well, I could write academic articles that get circulated in an academic journal that probably not a lot of people are going to read, or I could still take that film criticism or messaging from an article and make a documentary. And I think, films and documentaries are watched more, so my ideas and message will reach more people. And I think Sundance, that experience there at that festival, like festivals in general, I think that kind of took me from here and over there. And then along the way, like, one mentor in specific, Ben Selko, I was a post-production assistant for him on a basketball documentary in New Jersey, and he kind of took me under his wing and has been incredibly helpful. Canadian filmmaker and producer John Turner, who's now at IMAX, like especially with this project, The Track, he was he's like, just go film. Like he kind of gave me that extra little nudge to go do it. And yeah, like I think when and maybe why did these people at the time take a chance? I mean, I think, I just have good work ethic and say yes to things, even though if you don't necessarily want to do them. And then when you find the right moment to, ask these people for a favor, like, it's just being delicate and understanding they're busy. And I'm just glad that they were able to acknowledge my work ethic and kind of help, cultivate maybe a little bit of the talent that was there and push me to keep going. But those two guys come to mind, and Thomas Bensky's another. I mean, it's a huge list of people.
Yeah.
I could, my thank you list in the film's quite long. So
And finally, could be tomorrow, could be 5 years down the line, but we'll stay with the cinema theme. You're walking down the street and a marquee has The Track playing in a double bill with a film. Which one would represent a bit of a dream come true for you?
well, I think the easy answer is Cool Runnings, but I really love White Fortress by Igor, who's he was a Bosnian filmmaker who lives in Vancouver.
Mm-hmm.
But White Fortress, for me, I love that film. It's another coming of age story in Sarajevo. I think it played at VIFF.
2021.
Yeah, but that film is, I just love that film, how it's shot, and just just knowing, the boys in the movie and seeing this scripted, fictionalized version in Igor's film, which is like not too far off of what they're experiencing. It was really interesting. So I think those films would really pair nicely.
I wholeheartedly agree with you. Well chosen. Ryan, thank you so much for being here today and for sharing your thoughts on the film and sharing the film with us as well.
Yeah, no, it's been fun. Thank
We'll
you.
see the movies.
Yes, likewise. Yeah.
Thanks for listening to the VIFF Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe and leave a review. Also, check out viff.org to learn more about what's happening at the VIFF Center year-round.